What about a script for someone who has been in a relationship that has not been having sex for a long time? And as a sex therapist, what do you define as a normal, healthy amount of sex that doesn't include penetration, everybody? We're talking about actual moments of consensual pleasure with one another. How often should we be shooting for in order to have a healthy sex life, Dr. Emily?
So I'm not able to give you a number. I can't be prescriptive here. And people always want to know am I normal? We have sex 1 time a week. Is that okay? Is it 3 times a week? So, first, I want to say in your relationship, you both get to decide what feels good for you. How many times a week? How many times a month? What do you both need? And then we find that sometimes those numbers don't match up. It's not enough for one partner, it's too much for the other partner. And so every couple gets to decide, but then this is where it takes some negotiating, some compromise. I would say that overall, once a week feels pretty good to a lot of couples, and that seems to be common. Once a month, not usually, I don't think that that's as great. And if we're talking about even just intimacy and connection and touch, I don't believe that that's enough time for many. I think that we need to find out other ways to connect. But again, I don't like being prescriptive here because couples we do it every 10 days and it's great and we feel wonderful and that's great. But again, people are asking me usually because they have a suspicion that it's not enough or someone's not as satisfied.
What do you say to somebody who hasn't had sex in years with their partner? How do you even bring that up?
Well, I think that it's literally the elephant in the room. So again, using my timing, tone, and turf, you just say, hey, I think it's time let's talk about our sex. Are we okay with that? I know it's been a long time that's gone by and it doesn't feel good to me, or it does feel good to me. I mean, really, if the goal of that is to reconnect, listen, we have a certain agreements, and they're unspoken. We get married to someone or we commit to somebody, there's sort of the unspoken agreement that we're going to continue to be intimate. You can't opt out of your sex life, right? I mean, it's just, unless without talking about it, certainly.
I think a lot of people do. I think
They
a
do,
lot
Mel.
of
So
people stop having sex for whatever reason. They're pissed off, they have trauma, they're stressed out, all of this stuff. You go through body changes and you suddenly are embarrassed by the weight you gained, or your libido hits the, shitter like most of us in menopause. And then all of a sudden you look up and you're like, holy shit, it's been 3 months.
Once, yeah.
I mean, Chris and I have gone through a period where we didn't have sex for several months. And when I look back on the times when that's happened, it's when we were really struggling financially or in a lot of stress. And I thought about it all the time. There must be something wrong with us. Will we ever have sex? Is he not that interested in me? Like all of that stuff. But I think it becomes easy to opt out of having sex. And so how do you broach that for real in your relationship? Because there were a hell of a lot of people that wrote in about it.
Okay, Mal, that's great. And I'm glad thank you so much for, obviously you always are, but sharing your real, authentic vulnerability and stories, because I also want to say this. There's no sex police. No one's going to be knocking on your door and saying, I heard you guys haven't had sex in 3 weeks. What's happening over there? What's going on with you guys? It's okay that you're not having sex. Literally months go by. It's very, very common, okay, for couples. But what's missing from that is saying, hey, babe, I'm acknowledging that right now, I know we're not being intimate. And I just think we're going through stuff. I'm not feeling great in my body. My hormones are out of whack. Not feeling great. I know we're going through this money thing. So let's just, maybe we should maybe we could do some cuddling, or maybe we could just do some talk, just acknowledging it, Mel.
I had this vision that if you were to find the courage after listening to this to go to your significant other and be the one that just calls it out loud, that you're just going to say it out loud. We're not having sex. It makes me very sad. I would love to talk about it. I would love to connect with you. That you're kind of hitting day zero on a new chapter because you're actually no longer ignoring it. you are doing what Dr. Emily says we all have to do, which is we have to be responsible for our own sexual desires being met. And that begins by having the courage to say they're not being met and that it bothers you and that you want to do something about it. Dr. Emily, I'm single. I've been sober for a year and I'm timid to have sober sex. How do I get over this feeling?
That's really, really common. People who often become sober realize that the alcohol was a crutch and that's the only way they've been sexual. So first, compassion to yourself. You're learning a new skill set, lots of self-love here and compassion. And just go slow and find partners that you feel safe with, that you can let them know that, hey, it's been a while and this is a new chapter. My sex life is starting right now. And I want to go slow and I want to be able to communicate and I'd love to like make out and start to feel comfortable again. And I want it to be okay for me to like stop and start. And I think it really, all of this is about being honest and open and authentic where you're at in your journey and to also take the pressure off yourself.
It's beautiful. This is a really interesting question. Why can I not handle how good it feels? And I always have to stop in the middle of sex.
This person could really benefit from deep breath work and allowing the feeling to move through their body. This could be a few things. This could come from shame, feeling like you are actually not supposed to have pleasure, and from losing control. So maybe they feel the orgasm is coming up in their body and they're so afraid of what they're going to look like, what it's going to sound like. They actually don't know what's going to happen. And so it feels so good, but it's an out of control feeling. So 100% practice on your own, letting that feeling move through you so you can have an orgasm and you know what it feels like, and then you'll be able to let go with a partner more easily.
I have a ton of questions about past trauma, whether it's religious trauma and how it impacts your ability to enjoy it, or sexual assault trauma, or childhood trauma. What should somebody that knows that past trauma is inhibiting their ability to experience more pleasure and feel safe with sex, what are the steps that they need to take specifically?
Okay. Well, the first step is acknowledging that you've had trauma and it's something that you haven't had the opportunity yet to explore the impact it's had on your life, your sex life. You probably know maybe something's happened, but here's the thing now with trauma is that a lot of us just think that as time passes or if we just bury it, it's going to go away. But unfortunately becomes more exacerbated over time. Like whatever we resist persists. I highly recommend that if you've had trauma of any kind, but in particular sexual trauma, that you get into some therapy. I'm a huge fan of EMDR therapy, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. You could do it online now. This is a therapy that helps you rewire your brain, the neuroplasticity in our brain. We can really rewire our brains in this way using this kind of therapy. And there's also, I would say that EMDR is really effective therapy for doing this.
What are some simple signs based on your experience, Dr. Emily, that unresolved past trauma is impacting your sex life? Because I don't think a lot of people, unless it's sexual trauma, realize how past trauma and however it's impacted you in a moment of arousal, you're losing control and your old coping mechanisms can kick in. So what might someone be experiencing in the bedroom that could signal that there's an underlying issue with trauma that's impacting their ability to fully express themselves and be open with their partner or themselves?
So there's a few things that might happen, behaviors that might signal an underlying trauma. And that might be disassociation. So meaning you leave the room every time you have sex. You feel like you are up above looking down at your body. You might feel that you might not feel anything. You might actually feel like, I know that sex is happening, but I feel numb. You might actually even have pain. There's a lot of women, now more than is necessary, that have pain every time they have sex. Something called vaginismus or vulvodynia, which means that every time something goes inside of them, they have pain. It could be a tampon, it could be a finger, and it's not always the cause of trauma, but for many women, they had some kind of assault, and so their body has literally clenched, and their vaginal muscles have tightened. And that could be as a result of trauma. So anytime sex happens or something comes near them, they feel pain. And I just want to say, side note, if anybody is having pain during sex, 85% of women will have pain at some point in their life during sex. For many women, it's chronic. It's every single time they have sex. And I just want to say that you do not have to silently suffer through bad sex. See a pelvic floor physical therapist. I have a lot of resources on my site at sexwithemily.com. But Mel, we all, like women, I think we're like, we can handle it. We can give birth. We can have our periods once a month. We can have sex that hurts. And we just don't have to. And so that's just a side note about pain. Thank God there's more and more help these days, but we don't have to live with that. That's just a few. There could be sexual thoughts that are disturbing. It could be avoidance of sex, flashbacks.
Great.
A lot of it is body too stuff. So those are some signs.
Would you like to have better sex and more pleasure in your life? Of course you do. Do you feel like it's been so long since you've had sex that you can barely spell the word sex? And here's what I want you to know. You're not alone. This is why we need this conversation today. You and I need to bring more pleasure or more fun and more confidence into our lives and into the bedroom and into our sex lives.